Hello and welcome back. Now, for the most part, most of us really enjoy making our vehicles faster. We enjoy increasing the performance of our engines, and we also like making them look good. Now, sometimes with our budget, making them go fast and making them look good does not go hand in hand. Now, I'm going to help you all out on this one because I've done this a lot, and I'm going to show you how I take a cast finished intake and polish it. Now, this should save most people several $100s because the cost difference between a cast and a polished finish is roughly usually around $200 depending on the intake. Now, I've done this a lot over the years. It can be a little bit annoying, and I've seen people try to use sandpaper and do it all by hand. I don't go that route. I use air tools and electric tools to get the finish, make it a little bit faster. Like I said, I've done quite a few of these over the years, and we're going to do this one for our Project El Tempest. It's a Pontiac Performer RPM. Now, it is going to be a little tricky because there's a lot of little indentions and small spots in here. We may not get it perfect because I'm not sure what Elderbrock uses on their tools exactly to get their into all their little tight spaces, but I'm going to use what I have available to do the best I can and show you what we can do. And roughly, this should cost, other than your time, less than $50 depending on where you get your supplies at. So this should be a cost-effective way for a lot of you to get performance with a show finish and save you a lot of money. Okay, for polishing the intake, we're going to have to use several abrasives. And what we're really wanting to do is not take a lot of material off, but smooth it down to the point where it feels smooth. And we can do that a bunch of ways. Now, sometimes you have small crevices, you're going to want something like this comb point. And there's a bunch of other abrasives we can use to work our way up to a polish. Now, some of the easier ones to do, if it's smooth enough, you can take one of these Scotch-Brite wheels and basically get it pretty well smooth. This Dynafile that we use with this belt, we have different attachments, different sizes to get in different areas. That'll help us out. Now, we don't want to use too rough of a grit because that's just going to make it more complicated to put the finish on it later. So what we're going to want to do is use something like this first to get in all our little areas, and then we're going to go with something a little less aggressive to go back over those areas, smooth it out, because the comb point is going to get these little spots that we can't get with anything else. And smooth as much as that you can. I said the trick here is we don't want to use something too aggressive because we don't want scars or anything in it. Something like this is a little aggressive, but we're only going to want to use it in the places where we can't get with the softer stuff. And just try not to use a lot of pressure and a lot of speed, just so we can easily get it out later. And you can see something like this. And basically you want to just keep going over it smooth until you can run your hand across it and you feel it smooth and you don't see no pores. And also like this wheel right here, you can see smooths that up pretty well. Now there's a few little imperfections from the factory there. And I'm not going to completely get those out because I'm not going for a complete show. You can see these tools are great, but of course there's little spots that we can't completely get just due to the creases, the crevices, and nooks and stuff from the castings and the shape of it and everything. Now that is a Merit 120 grit Scotch-Brite wheel that we use. Now we also got this 3M Scotch-Brite wheel that we can use to get in the grooves. And as you use it, it wears down and gets smaller, so it'll be easier to get in there. We have these small arc aggressive mini flapper wheels that can get in the mini tight spots. And once we do all the smaller tools, then we'll run it over in the areas and blend it as far as we can with this rapid finish wheel from Norton. And this is really great. It smooths everything off real well, nice, and it'll blend a lot of imperfections as long as you don't use a lot of pressure. That's what we're going to do. We're going to start off in all the little nooks and crannies first. Get all that done. Step up the size with the Dynafile and the Scotch-Brite wheel to get the large areas and blend out a little bit more. And then we will use the rapid finish wheel over the extremely large areas. And then we'll go with blending. Now here's the belt I've been using from ARC on my Dynafile, if any of y'all are interested in using it. Now to get down inside the little edges and smooth it up after the comb point, one trick is to take something like this rod that's got a slit in it, so we can put variations of Scotch-Brite on it, on our angle grinder. And we're going to start off with the brown first and go through here and smooth it up, and then we go over it with red and some green until we get it smooth, because this will actually go in and smooth up marks from anything aggressive like a comb point or anything like that. And if you work your way down, you eventually get it nice and smooth, like here. Now, for the most part, they got that a lot smoother, but we're still going to have to go over it with red and then some green to get it before we can polish it out and make it real shiny. And we're just going to do that over everything, like right here, and these little corners, little edges, anywhere you can't get a normal tool in to smooth off your grinder marks, like little grooves right here. You can see we've already done it. It's already looking smooth. It's just going to take a little time. Now we're going to take this brown Scotch-Brite and run over the whole thing, smooth out the imperfections and any of the other grinding abrasive tools left. And after we do the whole thing with this brown, then we're going to go ahead and do the whole thing with red. And I did mention earlier green, but this time we're going to go gray instead of green because it's a lot finer, and we'll get a lot smoother, better finish afterwards. Alright, now we took our brown, went over it, got much of the pits out as we could in our grinder marks with the brown. Now we're going to go back over it with the red and get the brown marks out. Now, this would be similar to going with a 120 grit sandpaper and then to a 220 and so on and so forth. That's why we're doing a brown Scotch-Brite, a red Scotch-Brite, and a gray Scotch-Brite. It's a lot easier for me to put it on a tool and work with it. That way I don't have to do it by hand and take hours. But if all you have is sandpaper, that will work too. Now, going slow is a trick, and I don't know if you can see it on the video, but even though you think Scotch-Brite isn't doing much, you can actually see and feel the aluminum flying off. So as we're going slow and steady, it is removing aluminum, and we are getting it smoother as we go. Now, one thing is, if you don't want a fully polished intake, be somewhat smooth and slick looking, you can take the time, put all the grain one direction, and all the grain one direction on the runners, kind of like what we got here, and actually have a pretty decently smooth intake. But also, you never see a finish like that hardly ever, so it'd be a different finish. Whenever a judge come look at a car show or something, it'd be different, and it might draw the eye and catch some eyes and make it look a little different and stand out from the crowd. Make sure to run over the whole intake with the red. Get everything nice and smooth. Take your time. And get every little nook and cranny. Just get every little spot you can think of. And once we finish with the red, we're going to go back over with the gray. Alright, now we're going to use our gray Scotch-Brite. Now we're cutting these in bigger chunks because they have a bad habit of flying off. And we're just going to keep working on it until we get everything smooth. Now keep in mind that with this final gray, the smoother you get it now, the easier it is to buff it out in the end. Now, I don't know if you can see it or not, but there are pits still in this casting. Some of these pits are deeper than I want to try to dig out. So we're just going to go ahead and leave them because they would cause indentions or make the aluminum too thin in spots, so I'm not even going to mess with it or attempt it. Okay, now that we got the gray all done, we're going to go back over and start buffing. Now we're going to use our green buffing rouge, and we're going to use several different small tools like these and this to get in all the little small spots and smooth everything out. Now we want to use some little harder buffing pads right now to smooth everything out and start to buff it. Then we can go back over it with the lighter buffing pad. But right now, just going to start the process. Get a little buffing rouge, our pad, and start getting in spots. And now we're going to keep going until we get all the spots that we can't get with our larger buffing wheel, and just keep going until you get everything smoothed out and just like you want. And remember, the shinier you go, like a paint job, the more flaws you're going to see. So if there's too bad of a flaw and you don't like it, just go back, take care of that spot, and repeat the process until you get it where you want it. Now we're switching over to our larger buffer. Now the thing about this is I like using it because these are somewhat abrasive. With the high speed of these, it usually gets everything smooth a lot easier out here. But be careful with it because it can grab and pull, and you can get hurt real easy. Now we're just going to keep going over this until we get the final finish we want. Okay, now here it is. Now this is after I have used acetone to get the residue from the buffing polish left, and I use Windex to clean it off. Now the one on the left was bought brand new from Edelbrock, and it was their polish series, and if I'm not mistaken, they honestly, I think, use a different castings, or they go out and pick the best ones and polish them, because this one had a few flaws from the factory. There's a pit there, and there's another pit over there, and a couple deep pits in it that are way too deep, because by the time I go far enough to dig that out, it's either going to create a giant flat spot, or I'm going to have to do the whole runner and thin it out a little bit. And I'm still not sure on their methods, but it does look like they may use the better of the intakes or a different casting. See over here, you do get a reflection. And with ours, we do got our reflections. So it is pretty good and shiny. Now don't fret and try to get it too perfect, because there's some spots that are just going to be a complete pain to get, but overall, if you take your time, you can do this. Alright, there it is. Now that roughly took us about 6 hours to complete, and just some materials. So it's still cheaper than buying a new polished intake, but also keep in mind, if you want to go even more budget friendly and go with a used intake, which there's nothing wrong with, you can even shine one of those up and save you more money. Or if you find an old polished intake that is rough looking and just seen better days, now you know how to redo one and even save even more money. Now also, the reason I like the polished intake compared to the Addis cast is because a lot of times you'll see a cast aluminum intake and it's stained. Now they're kind of porous, they're rough, they're textured, oil, gas and all that eventually gets on them, antifreeze, kind of stains it, and it's a little harder to clean. Now after polishing it, you can easily take one of the smaller buffing wheels and some of the buffing rouge. If you got a stain on it or anything, you can just easily go back, buff a spot, and it looks new. You can go back eventually, a couple years down the road, a couple months, however long it takes to get dirty, depending on how much you drive it, and buff it again. That way it's always looking like new. Now, please, whenever you're doing anything with this kind of material and doing that, please wear some kind of respirator and mask, because all that stuff can get in your lungs called scarring. Now, unfortunately, I've learned that the hard way. I've been in fabrication shops for about 12 years, and I've been grinding and doing different styles of finishings on all kinds of different materials and metals. And unfortunately, I do have some of the scars on my lungs already. So please, if you do decide to do this, please wear a mask or respirator or something. Now, hopefully you enjoyed this and hopefully it helped you out. It was informative to you. Now, I hope this information proved helpful and helps you out. Now, if you liked it, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.